than today. I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind and opened up the doors. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down, and I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me?
This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Raw Deal, where my guests are about to join me after a rather hectic exchange with Victor Hugo Vaca, who is a self-styled gonzo journalist who has no ethics. He's committed massive defamation of me and knowing disregard of facts. He's got the proof in his hand, but he's not willing to admit it, even when the evidence is overwhelming. And I'm going to review the debate with my colleagues today here, including Ross Winter, Joaquin Agopian, and Bill Bonatotti, as soon as I can bring them in, which will take just a moment because of switching from one Zoom up to another. But it was pretty interesting, actually, all things considered. Let me see if I can get these guys here. Victor has been claiming, based upon an obscure attorney by the name of R. Wynn, W-Y-N Young, that I had thrown my Sandy Hook lawsuit, which turns out to be absurd because I'm still in court fighting it. So how can I have thrown a case that I'm still fighting in court? I've sent him documents to prove it. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. And we're going to have Victor here. I mean, we're going to have Joaquin and Ross and Bill here, and we'll talk about it. I'm kind of astonished by the level of depravity to which this guy will go. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. So we'll see what happens. I'm inviting everyone here. They should be here momentarily. And the problem is when you're dealing with a liar, you see, he can say anything. And lies can be easy to make, but complicated to expose. And he's made many lies. He's made lies not only about me, about Joaquin, who's now here joining us, about Russ Winter, about Bill Bonatotti. Joaquin, did you see that extravaganza?
Unfortunately, here in Indonesia, I could not pick up the Rumble. It won't show
really?
it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I will bet.
I tried for a half hour and I couldn't get there.
Okay. I'm willing to bet Russ was able to catch it, maybe Bill too. Let me just say, there was an exchange. He had a friend of his, I guess, named Curtis, who was going to, host a show. It was coming out on his channel on Rumble. And I just wrote about an hour before, just make sure we have equal time. I mean, that's the idea of a debate, equal time. So both parties get the opportunity to present their case. But Victor didn't want to have equal time. So I told Curtis no. Curtis said, oh, if you wanted that, you should ask for before. I said, well, the very notion of a debate implies equal opportunity to present. But it didn't happen that way. Victor apparently was willing to go for 5 hours. He would have liked to have me there to badger for 5 hours, Joaquin. But I explained, I had to go. I mean, my schedule here for this show is well known. So we got in an hour, and I got to tell you, it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild because Victor was willing to make no concessions. Under no circumstances he going to admit he's wrong. Yeah. So.
Yeah, he'll never admit wrong. Never.
I mean, does that go with the condition?
Yeah. He is a psychopathic narcissist, definitely. He fits all the categories.
Yeah, here we go with Russ. I'll bet you Russ was able to pick it up. Russ, did you catch that wild free fall? Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Kind of worried that you're going to have a heart attack. Thing.
Yeah.
Because I was going.
Man, I don't know if you got that full exchange, but I was just saying before the show that it ought to be equal time. I didn't care how we did it, equal time. I was suggesting 10 minutes.
At equal time, you both shouted over each other the entire time. That was equal.
Yeah, I think that's right. So, I mean, I was just glad I had worked on that PowerPoint last night, but I only began putting it together at 10:30 p.m. So I was up.
Yeah, but you're never going to be sure that. I mean, it was kind of weird because it was funny because Victor's the guy that started the shouting over. You started out fairly calm, but he started shouting. I mean, he's really very tricky at that. Are we on the air?
Yeah, we're on the air.
Oh, okay.
No, I want to talk about it. Go, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, he just kind of starts out with his rants and. I mean, he looked like he was stalling for time for a long time. I don't think he really wanted you to get into the stolen valor stuff. Yeah, I think he just wanted to skirt over that real quick and move along.
What?
But here's the definition of stolen valor right here. It's 38 U.S. Code 101, definitions of veteran. The term veteran means a person who served in the active military, naval, air, or space services, whose discharge or release there from conditions other than dishonorable. So I'm surprised that he even had a dishonorable discharge from the academy.
That even had an honor. He had an honorable. He was somehow discharged as a whistleblower, but he only served that 1 year as a midshipman. I mean, that photograph.
What's the let me ask you a question. Joaquin, answer this for me, will you?
Yeah.
What's the difference between me when I was a freshman at the University of Washington? I was kind of idiotic enough to go into Army ROTC, ROTC, and I went down there. I got hazed a little bit, but I got lots of demerits. I was probably kind of like you, Joaquin, because back in those days everybody wore their hair long, so I was not cut out for that at all. But I didn't want to drop out of the course because I wanted to get the credit. So I didn't re-enroll for sophomore year. I just quietly disappeared. There was no discharges involved, I don't think. So what was that?
No, a cadet that leaves the academy is not a veteran. He has not served.
What's he doing? What's he doing pulling all this discharge crap up for? What's that all about?
I think he voluntarily left. He couldn't stand all the hazing going on. And I don't know exactly when he left, whether it was 6 months or the full year at the end of the term of the freshman year. But he did only do 1 year or less at the Naval Academy. So that does not qualify him as a veteran. He did not serve active duty on any kind of military basis. He called himself an officer too, and he wasn't an officer. He was a midshipman.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know what I would be classified as, like a Army cadet or something.
You would have the same status. ROTC 1 year. Well, midshipman 1 year. Same
Yeah,
stuff.
wow. And he's claiming to be a veteran. I mean, I got to tell you, I've never gone through my life claiming to be a veteran just because I was in ROTC for a year.
Well, he's putting it up on donation websites. And he's got this photograph of him as a midshipman, obviously a freshman. No one who served in the military will put up anything but their highest rank. So that means that would be his highest rank. He never went anywhere. He was the lowest, like being a buck private in the Marine Corps. He went nowhere. Claiming to be a veteran, Susan had him right. Stolen valor.
A private in the active army would be a veteran, but he's not.
Sure.
He's not that.
Sure.
Right.
It's serving on active duty, which he never did. And by his own admission, he had it right there in one of his donation websites. He said
I don't see how he thinks he's going to pull this over. There's got to be a lot of veterans that watch these shows and kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
How does he think he can pull these lies off? At the public? But the only people that watch his shows are psychopaths. And I'm diagnosed.
Well,
so
he
would get some joy out of listening to this guy.
He advertised this far and wide. And I'll tell you why. He thought I wasn't going to show. Yeah. So he advertised it far and wide, and they was going to triumph that I was a coward, right? But my God, this guy indulges in such ad hominems, and they're so base, claiming I'm a closet homosexual. All my girlfriends and my wives would be pretty amused to hear that. I mean,
and then he tries to claim that painting that he has is some kind of like a woman with little shoes. Was it that revealing, Russ? I think he just didn't realize how much that backfired on him. I mean, one of us has a preoccupation with penis, but it wouldn't be me. I mean, here's a guy. He's been reported in the Miami New Times that had his 4 foot long painting. He's so vindictive for you that he's willing to go on there and lie, look like a sociopath, look like a total fool, just to get you riled. Just to get you riled. I mean, that is really psychopathic behavior. So he gets his joy, he gets his jollies out of getting you riled. He got you riled, Jim. He got you riled. You went on the show. He proved you're not a coward, but he got you riled. That's all he really cares about. He's got his vendetta.
How did you like the proof I had prepared? I mean, I spent a fair amount of time to get that down to 30 minutes, that I could do it.
Well, he just shot it over you. You couldn't present it.
We can, given what's going on here, let's take a look. I mean, here it was when this guy was Curtis, I was writing to him. It's common knowledge because he was saying I should have worked this out with Victor in advance. It's common knowledge a debate allows both sides equal time. If you were not prepared to host a debate, why did you volunteer? I sense this was between you and Victor to deny my right to equal time. It's the meaning of the word. You're violating what you agreed to do. If this was on the up and up, which is increasingly looking as though it never was, and that you were in on it, we must have equal time. Otherwise, it's just a free-for-all. Are you unfamiliar with the meaning of the word debate? And, of course, it was. When you say a free-for-all.
Well, to be fair to Curtis, I mean, that's pretty hard to corral you guys.
Yeah. Mr. James Fetzer, the entire point of this being both live and recorded is that if either participant behaves in an ungracious manner, the record will stand for itself. Less than an hour before a show is not the time to begin negotiating terms and conditions. Thank you for understanding, Curtis. Meanwhile, he put this out. Get this. He put out 15 videos last night, Ross. 15 videos last night. Jim Fetzer email publicly declares a debate with Victor Hugo set for April 23rd at 10 a.m. Central, 11 Eastern, and with 15 more videos last night. 15. Can you believe it? So here's what he sent to me by email shortly before. Jim.
Let me interject something here. He uses the term receipts for private emails between two individuals. That's a receipt.
Yeah. I'll read these emails where I'm just asking for equal time at the start of our podcast. Seance can see how you're attempting to dictate the terms of the show. You publicly asked to be a guest. I know he invited me, and I accepted his invite. You'll have the opportunity to share screen and present your evidence. For example, proof that I am stolen valor and never was an officer in the Navy. Did I do that, Ross? As well as documented evidence from a licensed psychiatrist who diagnosed me as all the things you claim I am on the shows you've been going on.
I mean, I'm kind of confused about this psychopath bullshit that he pulls. I mean, do you have to be a licensed psychiatrist to identify and
Well, I think if you just look at the staggering number of...
You can be a licensed clinician, which goes from marriage family therapist to
you missed my point,
psychologist.
Jakeem. Am I not allowed, or in this particular case, Charlie Carter, not allowed to spot a psychopath? That's not permitted?
Of course, it's well, you know, it's one thing to name call somebody, but it's another thing to actually have a license to be able to diagnose psychiatric disorders.
He's going with that. Yeah, well,
and he does not have that right because he didn't have the credential.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
he was offering an opinion.
Right, exactly.
Meanwhile, he says, as well as documented evidence from a licensed psychiatrist who diagnosed me as all the things you claim I am on the shows you've been going on, you know. That doesn't require 30 minutes or 10. We can get that out of the way first so you can expose me as both a clinical psychopath and a criminal stolen valor. I think he probably is. I mean, I agree I'm not licensed, but I think his behavior shows it. You know as well as I that your voice is like nails on a chalkboard. So if you talk 30 minutes or even 10 minutes straight, it'd be torture to the worldwide audience. Man, is he vainglorious, turning in to decide for themselves if I'm all the things you're claiming in public about me. You know, he's talking about me allegedly defaming him when it's been the opposite. I mean, this is a nice case of projection. Is that not right, Joaquin?
Well,
that's one of the chief characteristics of basically borderline personality, narcissistic disorder. They always project back onto the person they're talking to as all the problem that they themselves have.
And then he says, you'll have all the time you need. As you know, my shows often go over 5 hours. If you thought I was going to hang on for 5 hours, man.
I imagine going another minute.
No, I was so glad when the time came to join you guys. So if you think any...
Come on, Jim, don't hang in there. Don't have a stroke.
So if you think a normal conversation is each person pontificating for 30 minutes straight, then you could do that on your show, but not mine. And you should have...
You know, he can really insult. He can really lay the insults out, and it's just like a stream of consciousness. He's very, I don't know if the word is good at it. He's very proficient at just streams of insults, and it's hard for me to picture a mind like that. I mean, I can be kind of snappy sometimes, but I can't just do it in a string. I couldn't sit there for 1 hour with you and just rattle off one insult after another.
I think he's had a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's way beyond my abilities.
He's quite an expert at this kind of disinformation operation. You should have presented this nonsense to me before you accepted my gracious offer to host you. He really was setting me up. I mean, the whole idea was to treat me like...
I told you.
Yeah, of course. Well, I knew, Russ. I knew, Russ.
You were courageous. You're not a coward. You can't go
Russ,
that accusation.
Russ, it was better to go on and endure the SOB than to not. I mean, you know, to host you so you can expose me worldwide as a criminal psychotic fraud, not minutes before the debate. I think he did that himself. So,
exactly.
So get it out of the way immediately, Jim. Expose me as a stolen valor, criminal, psychopathic fraud while sharing your screen with documented evidence. Then you can drop the mic. He can't even spell Mike, M-I-C, and go home because in less than 2 minutes, you can win the entire debate and leave me exposed to the world as a criminal fraud. I think he did that himself, Russ. Would you agree?
Definitely.
And then I had all these. I mean, this is a sample. He's got hundreds of these where he's attacking each one of us, as we well know. I mean, who in the world would do this if they were in their right mind? I mean, it's just incredible to me. He thinks he can do this and have people think that he's sane or normal or not psychopathic or.
There's what right there on the screen is one of my favorites. Russ Winter claims granddaughter has herpes, tells of trusting Jim Fetzer. That's not defamation or slander.
Oh God, yeah, awful.
That doesn't violate the terms of condition. And then the other argument he makes is that we are going after free speech. And we're going after the First Amendment of free speech, and we're going to shut, shoot, and rumble down.
Yeah, just ridiculous.
And that's a typical Victor pronouncement.
Yes.
When in reality, we just simply want some of the terms of service enforced.
Yeah.
Against the kind of stuff I showed you.
Yes. We just want them to.
I don't want to really take down every one of Victor's. I'd like to take it down his whole channel if I could. Sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to take down every video that he's ever done.
No, we just want.
Well, he puts out a lot of his videos on the Goyim site, and I think that's his site, right? That Goyim.
I wouldn't be surprised.
On that.
Not about free speech.
And Rumble just followed the rules, they would take them down, but I guess they never have.
Yeah, I'm gonna send him a cease and desist or demand this weekend. I'm working on it. Russ, you need to send me the email because Bill's never got to me, and I'm kind of surprised Bill's not here. I did invite him to join us, but here's the key one. Todd Collender affirms Win Young, Alex Jones, Jim Fetzer, Sandy Trials. This is where he claims we threw our trials. I'm not going to speak for Alex, but I'm certainly going to speak for myself. It's not even possible because I'm still in court. So he did all this, and it's completely outrageous. He did all this without reading a single brief. He claims I didn't have writer's insurance, that I didn't move my case to federal court, that federal issues were involved, and that parties were from several states, but insurance would only have paid off liability. It wouldn't have affected my argument at all. I couldn't find an attorney to represent me, and I would almost certainly have been denied the right to move it to federal court. And I'm still in court fighting to have it reversed. What is there not to understand, Russ?
Okay. When he was talking about the Supreme Court, he acts like he's really a researcher, and he goes to your cases and sees some different actions in the Supreme Court. Earlier actions.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain that?
Well, I did go to the Supreme Court in a series of appeals here through the Wisconsin courts, because it turns out that the Wisconsin summary judgment procedure is unlike that of other states. It may be unique.
But he said the Supreme Court dismissed everything, and that's not true, is it?
No, they just denied the request for a hearing. That's all. That's what they do. Only like 2% of those submitted to the court are given or issued writs. So in a way, it was unsurprising, except mine set up very important 7th and 14th Amendment questions, because I pointed out that in other states like Texas, this case would have been thrown out or at least sent to a jury. And it even turns out to be that the Wisconsin Constitution enshrines the right to a trial by jury, which I was denied here. So it turns out, and this is fascinating, that the Supreme Court has affirmed 9 of the first 10 amendments as applying to each of the individual states. The only one not, the 7th Amendment. So I was teeing it up for the court to declare the 7th Amendment applies to all 50 states. And in all candor, I've been given to understand this was political. And of course, he's committing defamation. It is true that I, as a public figure, a higher bar when suing for libel or slander than private individuals, because I must prove defendant acted with actual malice, meaning they either knew the statement was false or recklessly disregarded its truth. The standard established by New York Times versus Sullivan aims to protect robust public debate and avoid chilling free speech. So what is actual malice? Public figures must demonstrate the defendant, in this case, Victor Hugo Vaca, W. Wynne Roy, published defamatory statement with actual malice mean they knew the statement was false, or they acted with reckless disregard for whether it was false or not, which I dare say I've done in spades. I mean, you had Bill sending Wynn all these briefs where he worked with me on a couple of them on my motion to open sanctions pursuant to extrinsic fraud and fraud upon the court, and my motion to recuse Judge Frank Remington. So he knew what he was talking about. He sent these to Wynn early on, and he sent Wynn so many that Wynn sent Bill a cease and desist. Can you believe that? Wynn was so unwilling to look at the facts.
Wynn's disappeared. He's in. I think Victor's got him locked up in his crazy aunt's attic.
I think Todd may have told him he's running a risk of disbarment. So here you have some of the conditions. These are for Rumble. Content or material promoting or providing information about illegal activities, promoting harm or injury to any group, individual, or cruelty to animals, including but not limited to disseminating personal information about another individual for malevolent purposes, including libel, slander, doxing, defamation, or violation of an individual right to privacy. Content or that infringes
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
Management would like to take a moment to thank the listeners and hosts for all their support that has made Revolution Radio one of the biggest platforms for free speech in an ever-growing dark world of censorship. Unfortunately, this platform for free speech has never been free. We need the support of the people. It is the people like you, yes, you, that keeps the station in the front lines of the battle against tyranny and oppression. Please help support Revolution Radio so free speech will not be silenced in a world that seems to be going deaf to the real truth. With your support, we will be able to become an even bigger pillar of light in a dark world.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Revolution Radio.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
content or material that infringes or encroaches on the rights of others, including but not limited to infringement of privacy, publicity rights, and harm to reputation. So that's the terms of service of these platforms. It's pretty clear. They're just not enforcing it at all. You can send out people's addresses, phone numbers. That's happened a little bit. Slander.
The free for all.
It's a free for all. Yeah. So that's a big issue. This is not free speech.
Right. It's slander, defamation, libel. It's outrageous. And you notice how he specializes in straw men, creating an exaggerated version of a position to make it easier to attack, just as you were observing, Russ. He says we want to shut down BitChute and Rumble. No, we want BitChute and Rumble to shut down Victor Hugo Vaca. So, you know, I mean, it ain't quite the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not defending Victor Hugo Vaca's right to free speech. I got to admit that. But at minimum, they need to start cleaning up a lot of his videos, a lot of his attack videos. It probably could, but that's a lot of work. You know, they've been reported and they just ignore it. They don't really care.
I think this
I'm kind of proposing that we just kind of move on with our stuff and then maybe create our own channel that just does nothing but does slander on Victor. Nothing else but that.
Listen, I think we need to go through this today so someone can make sense out of what just happened that last hour. So indulge me. Now, this was satire to bring out exactly the style of approach to legal issues and such of Victor and Win Young. Breaking news, Gonzo journalist exposes Jim Fetzer as government op. And here you got a bunch of my books. I mean, I got 8 books with Moonrock Books on Charlottesville, on Parkland, on JFK, on 9/11, on Sandy Hook, on the Boston bombing, on Orlando and Dallas, on the moon landing. 6 of which have been banned by Amazon. Self-described Gonzo journalist Victor Hugo Vaca III, who gained notoriety in Miami for hanging 4-foot penis paintings across from the VIP section at Art Basel. Notice he never answered whether he had done this or not. I asked him repeatedly. Miami New Times reported in 2008.
He claimed it was something else that you were imagining. He gaslighted you. You're imagining something, Jim, because you're a closeted homosexual. You see a penis. Everybody sees a penis, but somehow it was.
But it was the Miami New Times. I knew nothing about this. It scored perhaps his greatest triumph by exposing Jim Fetzer, PhD, former Marine Corps officer and retired professor of philosophy, is actually a government agent. When asked for evidence, Vaca declared, "I'm only a journalist with incredible integrity who simply reports the news. It's our Win Young who has a proof. I'm only reporting it." When Young was asked about Fetzer's role...
Win Young, by the way, is retired to an addict.
No, we haven't seen him in quite a while. When Young was asked...
Where's Waldo? Where's our Win?
When Young was asked about Fetzer's role as a government agent, given Fetzer has published exposés about JFK, 9/11, Sandy Hook, the Boston bombing, Charlottesville, Parkland, and even the moon landing, Win replied, "Some of these ops are very clever at creating cover stories. He's one of the best at doing that." When asked about his proof, he explains, "You don't actually need proof. When I saw he had thrown his Sandy Hook case, I knew he was an op." Asked about his recent appearance on Stu Peters, Win was quick to dismiss it. It's another cover story. Win knew that Fetzer, like Alex Jones, had thrown his case because he didn't have insurance and could have handled it differently. When asked how insurance, which would have paid off any liability arising from the publication of his book, made a difference to his arguments in court, Win declared, "Don't be silly. He didn't do what I would have done," which is proof enough. When it was observed.
Which I say, isn't it a shame that we don't have our Win Young as a guardian angel on our shoulders during our entire life? I should have had our Win on my shoulder when I enrolled in ROTC when I was a freshman at the University of Washington.
When it was observed that Victor Hugo had also appeared on Stu Peters, Wynn was emphatic. I know government ops when I see them. You don't need evidence. You don't even want proof. The Gonzo journalist himself said that Wynn was backed by notable attorney Todd Collender, who was mute listening to Wynn spell out his case against Fetzer. When asked how they could possibly know without having read his book, any of his briefs, or watched any of his videos, he replied, Wynn explained that already. Once you know someone is an op, you don't want to look at anything they've done because you already know it's propaganda. Contaminated. Case closed.
You know what, though? A lot of people think this way. It sounds kind of odd that you're attributing to this guy, but I'll tell you what, there are a lot of people with the same mentality. That's what's really unfortunate.
For further substantiation of his role as an op, Victor Hugo added, just look at his coverage of JFK, which demonstrates beyond all doubt that Jim Fetzer is a government op. Case closed.
Yeah, Victor kind of repeated that in your so-called show, your so-called debate. He kind of repeated that very point.
Isn't that incredible? Those who have taken a look at what Fetzer has done about JFK in 3 books that shattered the cover-up and a 4th that exposes who were responsible and why have been baffled by his allegations. You can take my word for it, as a former naval officer turned artist, Jim Fetzer is an op. There's no room for doubt about it. Adding that for confirmation, they should take a close look at his latest on JFK. And it's right there on my blog, and it's been republished by State of the Nation. Meanwhile, I turned to the actual case. Here was the original complaint, where I sought to explain that they attached a death certificate on the right, different than the death certificate that I'd published, which had no file number, no state or town certification, while the one they published had both a file number and state and town certification. And yet in the complaint, it claimed they were not materially different, which means differences in the eyes of the law were obviously having a file number, state and town certification or material differences. The circuit court, at the outset of the case, narrowly limited its focus, advising Fetzer that whether Sandy Hook had occurred was beyond the scope of this action, stating unequivocally, whether or not Sandy Hook ever happened or not is not relevant to this, the truthfulness or the accuracy of the death certificate. Now, I understand the defendant's overall theory in believing that it never happened, and I'm not going to take the bait and let this case go down the rabbit hole. When the death certificate in question says the decedent died at Sandy Hook on 14 December of multiple gunshot wounds. How could it be from anything other than the purported event for which I can prove it? It was a FEMA drill. So if anybody died, it might have been by accident, stepping on an electrical cord in water or something like that. Meanwhile, here we have other actions a judge took.
That death certificate. Notice the time of death, 11 o'clock.
I raised that issue in the book, but it turns out that just when it was made out. Yeah, the actual time was 9:35.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So look at this. Here's what else the judge did, and this is why I'm trying to recuse him. He suppressed the affidavit of Kelly Watt. See, what they did was argue that actually what the plaintiff, Leonard Posner, had done was to give Kelly Watt a death certificate like the one they attached to the complaint with a file number, state, and town, and that somehow we converted it into this. Well, Kelly's affidavit, which he suppressed, said no. That was the one that she was given by Leonard Posner, the one with no file number, no state or town certification. He also dismissed proof nobody died at Sandy Hook, as you've just seen. He set aside the reports of 2 forensic document experts. This is just stunning. By the time we got to the oral hearing, there were 4 different versions of the death certificate and evidence. The 2 you've already seen. And then the publisher, Dave Gahary, got an additional from the town, and I got an additional from the state. So already 4 in evidence. The document experts concluded all 4 including the one I published and the one they attached to the complaint, were fake. All 4 were fake. But the judge just set it aside. They didn't have an opposing expert. That ought to have been decisive. He also denied me discovery on my counterclaims. He wouldn't let me do that, where I could have unearthed more evidence, but he bifurcated the case so I could only do it after the original.
Jim, let me ask you now. In Wolfgang's case, was he kind of doing the same thing? He was, but his evidence was accepted, or
No, what happened was.
what's different about Wolfgang's case?
What happened was Leonard Posner, the same plaintiff, did not show up in court. And
he had to enter the discovery, right?
right. What happened was that the judge declared that if he didn't show up in court, then he forfeited the case. So he forfeited the case because Leonard Posner wouldn't show up in Wolfgang's case. And Wolfgang prevailed. But there he had a judge who was at least making an effort to adhere to the rules of the court and proper procedure. Then he...
And so for our listeners, you got to understand that Win Young, a.k.a. Victor Hugo, are claiming that Wolfgang lost his case.
He said that? He said that? No, Wolfgang won.
Yeah, in reality he did.
Yeah.
He said he threw the case.
No, he wouldn't. That was Alex Jones. Did he say that about Wolfgang too?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been kind of keeping an eye on Wolfgang's defense of this stuff, because he's been maligning too. They just basically said both of you guys are the guru. He calls you the gurus through the case, including Wolfgang. That's a very important consideration.
That is.
That's just factually not true.
That's right. That's very good. He refused to admit proof that Noah Posner is a fiction. In fact, he is. It was made out of photographs of the son of the guy who calls himself Lenny Posner, whose real name is Reuben Wagner. So he made up Noah Posner out of photographs of Michael Wagner, his younger son, as a fictional character who died at Sandy Hook. Meanwhile, he refused to acknowledge I was a media person. Get this. If you're media, then there's a higher standard. But he didn't acknowledge I was media, even though I was being sued for 3 sentences in a book that I'd edited and another book to which I contributed. I mean, it's absurd that he wouldn't qualify me as a media person. And then when I tried to expose the imposter who came to testify in Madison as Leonard Posner, as too young and too small to be the Sandy Hook Leonard Posner, and he turns out to have been Reuben Wagner's older son, Benjamin, who he sends out to these courts to impersonate him. The judge sanctioned me. Would you believe in that? Get this, Russ, $650,000 fine. $650,000 for exposing.
I better shut up with my wow on that one.
Yeah, I know. So look, here's Michael Wagner in the upper right. Here's supposed to be.
This is basically, ladies and gentlemen, this is your real live free speech suppression and due process process.
Yes.
Victor Hugo is putting a complete smokescreen about nothing, just fabricated.
Yes, 100%.
The First Amendment, and Jim has already showed himself to be, courageous in this, and even dealing with this stuff before, and then even going on Victor's fucking show. Come on, this kind of stuff.
So get
off, Victor.
So get this, Larry Rivera has done brilliant research proving the figure known as Doorman standing in the doorway of the Texas School Book Depository was in fact Lee Oswald, as Harold Weisberg, Jim Garrison, and other serious students of JFK have believed. So I'm sure he could help to resolve the issue by superposition. And as we got Noah on the left, we got Michael Wagner on the right. And when you do a superposition, look at this. It's the same person. It's the same person. Total fraud. Total fraud.
He's got a very large, wide mouth.
Yep.
The shape.
I mean, isn't that astounding? And get this. Michael Wagner is alive and well and doing stand-up comedy in Cambridge, Mass. There he is, the comedy studio. Look at the third, fourth name down, Michael Wagner. Joaquin, what do you think about this part of it?
Well, it's great that you were able to point all these discrepancies out, but you know, my view is this was basically a presidential sanctioned false flag that across the board, the judicial system in this country was going to be totally against you. And this judge that ruled in your case, where did he come from? Do you know anything about his background? My view is that the federal government intervened and said, you shut this case down. He got orders to shut it down, kangaroo court, so it never gave you the opportunity to present your side of the story.
Right,
Obviously,
right,
the truth.
Right.
But I'm wondering about this judge.
Yeah, of course. Oh, I brought claims against him. I'm asking him to be recused. I'm accusing him of collaborating with the attorneys here to deprive me of my constitutional rights. So you're 100% correct, Joaquin. Meanwhile, I mean, if you want proof, here, this is a snapshot of the 4 cases I have in the Wisconsin Court of Appeals, District 4. I've got 4 live cases, which they are going to be deciding here in short order. In other words, I can't have thrown the case when I'm in court fighting the case.
No, when Victor was overshadowing you, he kept putting up the Supreme Court cases that were different. You know, would they? These are different. These are basically actions that were sent to the Supreme Court. Would they accept them for consideration?
Right.
No, we don't want to look at this, which the Supreme Court does all the time.
Right.
These are your active cases. So once again, Victor's obfuscating.
Right.
All the time.
Right. He's prevaricating. He's lying. And here you got, these are some of the attachments for the rehearing petition. This would be before the Supreme Court for the motion to dismiss, denial of the motion to dismiss. They've here in my efforts now to bring this matter before the Court of Appeals right here in Wisconsin, they have made a feeble effort to get it dismissed, and they refuse to dismiss it. And it's because I got the goods. But I mean, I'm doing the legal work. How could Wynn claim that I threw the case when I'm right here, proof that I'm still fighting it in court? And get this, Kevin Barrett was in court when my hearing took place for punishment for having allegedly.
And by the way, Bill Bonatotti sent those active cases to Wynn. He sent them.
Yes, he did. I know he did.
Totally aware. He's not ignorant of
right. And guess what? Wynn sent back a cease and desist order to Bill. He didn't want to hear it. Can you believe that? And here's Kevin writing about how I was framed in court. And then here's a whole book about it by Ronald Avery, about how this whole thing was a charade, that I was railroaded, that it has no merit at all. And then we get, of course, to this veteran American refugee living near the Russian border. He's falsely claiming to be a veteran. And notice he's got the one photograph, which is as a freshman at Annapolis, freshman. A veteran is a person who served in the active military Naval Aerospace Reserve of the U.S.
Yeah. Now, the only thing that they could do, and it was a sidekick that did it, Griffin, is what is your source for this statement? Okay, well, I have.
What do you mean? You mean for definition of a veteran?
Yeah, he wanted to know where you got this particular.
Well, it's a standard internet definition, but I mean, it's a standard definition anywhere you want to look.
It's more than that. It's actually, there's a statute. You know,
yeah.
So I can
yeah, very good. Outlined in Title 38 of the U.S. Code. Joaquin, isn't this absurd, even for this kid to say what's a source of that? I mean, I think it means he was starting to put 2 and 2 together and realize that Victor's a fraud. That's what that tells me. Do you think?
Yeah, how could you not? You see, he's a fraud. You know, they're just grasping at straws. Where did you get this definition? Active military.
Of
It's,
course, absolutely
yes,
standard.
Title 38 of the U.S. Code.
That's
It is.
right. Title 38 of the U.S. Code. And here's more. Veteran American refugee speaking truth to power where he admits it. My name is Victor Hugo Vaca Jr. I served as a midshipman officer at the United States Naval Academy and received an honorable discharge after being a whistleblower. Go ahead.
Joachim, midshipman officer, that's not.
No, they don't go together. Midshipman is not an officer until he graduates and becomes it.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's another obfuscation.
Yeah. This is his practice. After being a whistleblower who exposed toxic leadership at the highest level of government and military following the attempted cover-up of sexual assault of a female midshipman officer, I was being groomed to be a traitor to my country at the World Premier Leadership Laboratory in Annapolis, Maryland. I've dedicated my life to exposing corruption. As a modern art gonzo journalist and founder of the modern art music movement, the fusion of art, music, film, fashion, literature, and education. But the guy's a total fraud. He's a total fraud. Meanwhile, I showed I'm not, that I served as a Marine Corps officer. And here you have me when I was graduating.
They even questioned you on that.
I know it.
They just throw every kind of slander and vile accusation that they can come up with, because he's on the defensive. He knows damn well he's never been a midshipman officer. He knows he's never been in active military. He's claiming to be a veteran, so he does what Victor always does: throws it back in your face with some kind of vague accusation from his psychopathic audience. I mean, he just really thinks his audience is really smart people.
Joaquin, what did you think of this aspect of the argument?
Well, night and day difference. You know, he's fraud, claiming to be an officer, and he's a Annapolis quitter. And then you put up your entire military career that's all, very legitimate. So it's like night and day contrast.
It's just stunning. This guy goes so far. And then, of course, we got the New Times of Miami. And this is published back in 2008 on December 11th. Courtroom antics from one of Miami's strangest. Victor Hugo Vaca has a creative way of getting his point across to protest the nastiness of bureaucracy, the wayward, fiercely opinionated Navy officer turned artist, false, has tried everything from running for U.S. president. I mean, that's
obviously what he's telling the Miami New Times, though.
That's right. That's right. Who's tried everything?
Always a liar.
Yeah, from running for U.S. president to hanging 4-foot penis paintings across from BIP section to Art Basel, wherever.
Now this for the audience that didn't listen to this show between Jim and Victor, and spare yourself, really. I mean, if you want to kind of sample it, go ahead, but. This is where Victor starts going, Jim, are you a closet homosexual? Jim, are you a closet homosexual? Just over and over. I think I counted 21 times where he said that.
Really? Where the F did that come from?
I mean, distracted because you're trying to talk. You're trying to talk over him. I'm observing him, and he's just in the background saying this over and over again, trying to overtalk you. And on this 4-foot art that he has, 4-foot penis.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
what a guy, Victor. What a guy.
Meanwhile, Charlie Carr sent me his number to call. We had a cordial 20-minute conversation. He said he had a 9-minute video about Victor on Easter Sunday. He said he'd publish it. He did. And a second about our conversation. Here's his message to me with a happy Easter, which I reciprocated to him. Charles Carr to confession, Victor Hugo. That's the 9-minute uncut vid before we talked, and then after he published another. Here's what's really going on. Bill has sent Wynn copies of dozens of...
By the way, let me interject something that I spotted in that confession video.
Yeah.
And sometimes Charlie's he slurs a little bit, but he was sober. All these videos he did lately he's been sober. He wasn't drunk.
Yeah, I agree.
That accusation, he is a drunk, but that accusation on these particular videos, he was sober.
Bill, and of course, this has been a taught. He has sent win copies of dozens of my current legal briefs. Kevin told Victor to his face he was wrong to claim that I had thrown my case, and he was there observing in court. Kevin even published an article about my legal lynching. I published an open letter with links to several briefs. It's impossible to throw a case when you're still in court. Ron Avery has published a book on my judicial plundering. Victor continues to viciously defame me and my colleagues. This is an extraordinary case of digital harassment and cyberbullying. I mean, wow. Tell me.
Anyway, to finish what I was just saying, Charlie spotted early on, he calls them red flags, where Victor was talking about some service on some ship or some group or something. I don't know the nomenclature. You can go and hear it at 2 minutes and 4 seconds in Victor's confession, in Charlie's confession video, and he said, Victor.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Was it a conspiracy? Did you know that the police in Boston were broadcasting "This is a drill, this is a drill" on bullhorns during the marathon? That the Boston Globe was tweeting that a demonstration bomb would be set off during the marathon for the benefit of bomb squad activities? And that one would be set off in 1 minute in front of the library, which happened as the Globe had announced. Peering through the smoke, you could see bodies with missing arms and legs, but there was no blood. The blood only showed up later and came out of a tube. They used amputee actors and a studio-quality smoke machine. Don't let yourself be played. Check out And Nobody Died in Boston Either. Available at moonrockbooks.com. That's moonrockbooks.com.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. And bomb us, fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. But time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio.
It is no secret that the so-called mainstream media is best described as controlled propaganda. Countless news stories are either totally ignored or spun with half-truths, and because of this, essential facts and vital information are often compromised. Join Dr. Ott every Friday night on Studio B at 10 p.m. Eastern and learn why The Story Behind the Story was nominated for a Peabody Award in its second year of producing unparalleled broadcasting excellence in 1997. That is, if you really care about learning the truth.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Please do.
Okay, I just looked up the Stolen Valor Act. I guess it's 2013, and how that constitutes a criminal offense.
Good.
Now, reading through it, it doesn't look like just claiming you're a veteran or a naval officer per se is a criminal offense. But when you start adding it to your fundraiser and asking for money and claiming, saying I'm a veteran living in the former Soviet Union, then that constitutes a criminal offense.
Very good.
So Victor's right. He says you can show that I'm committing stolen valor. It's a criminal offense. He was the one that brought that up.
I think that's great. Joaquin, your thoughts? What are your thoughts, Joaquin?
Well, yeah, there's an admission right there that he's a fake, he's a fraud. It really takes a lot of credibility away from him, and it's by his own self-confession. That's pretty damn good.
That's what I thought when I found that. What's the overall? Go ahead,
You got a couple codes. You got a couple very clear codes and statutes on this stuff, Victor. It's not vague at all. The law is pretty clear. Active military service, not a dropout like me. Me and you, Victor, you and me are in the same camp. We're dropouts, but I've never gone through life claiming I was a veteran.
Russ, now you got to watch a show which Joaquin was unable to. Tell us about it. What was your impression of the show from beginning to end? I mean, how did it begin when I came in?
You guys shouted over each other the whole time. It really disintegrated. I feel sorry for old Curtis Griffin, to be honest with you. There's no way to moderate it. At one point, the shouting was added. There was an add-on shouting where they just replayed the Patrice call. That was the Patrice call where you say, Patrice, listen to me. Patrice, listen to me. And then Victor would, repeat that over and over again, as if though that's supposed to really
what was
his, lowbrow.
What did he think he was accomplishing by doing that, Ross?
I think his goal is just to try to give you a heart attack.
A heart attack? Oh, you think literally? Literally?
Kind of agitated.
Literally? Wow. Now, I got a pretty robust heart. I'm not gonna.
Maybe that's going too far. No, he was just basically. He was on that whole. It's just really all about you. Just vendettas against you. It's kind of amazing and somewhat us. He's, he will make himself look like a jackass, look like a psychopath, everything. He'll make himself really look bad as long as he can irritate and agitate us and get us upset. And on that, he's succeeded. So that kind of begs the question: what do we do next? What's our next step on dealing with this guy?
Now, Joaquin.
I've been saying all along, ignore the bastard. He's not worth it. He's going to fade. He's going to find some other thing to conflict because he seeks out conflict.
He seeks attention. He's an attention craver.
I don't think his audience is even there anymore. I think they've been dwindling. I don't follow it, but I'm sure. How long will you sit there and get into this? I think he's a one-shot deal, and he's already shot his wad. I think he's done. So I prefer not even to discuss or spend any further time on this guy.
I think that's fine. But I wanted to ask, in your professional opinion, I mean, what is his state of mind? I mean, it's bizarre. What is it?
He meets all the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. He meets the personality disorder criteria as a psychopath. He has no conscience, and he always feels victimized, and therefore able to project all his anger energy out. And I also mentioned in my little email to him and a lot of other people that when he quit Annapolis, that was a big blow to his father, who never forgave him for that. And so, and as a teenager, he was really wounded by his father's response to his quitting Annapolis, such an honorable institution. And I think he's never recovered from that. And he's never really grown up and become an adult. He just projects all the anger out on other people whenever he feels attacked. And because he's already kind of a borderline personality narcissist, he's always feeling like, if you say anything against him, he can't meet you as an adult. He will meet you as an adolescent who's just venting and projecting all his anger out in a psychopathic way on whatever object he feels has injured him. And so that's his MO, whether it's the Jews, that may be like his cover up for being wounded by his father and never, having his father feel any kind of pride once he quit Annapolis, But he's got some deep, deep rooted impairments that the guy will not. And here's another thing: personality disorders. The therapists hate treating them, especially borderline personality, because they're really hard to correct. These people that have these kind of personality disorders wear that label basically for life, projecting out onto other people. And so the guy, I don't see him ever changing it and improving or, ever overcoming his impairments. So yeah, I think we just need to leave him in the past, and he's going to fade by himself.
I'm glad to do that, but I think we needed this opportunity to call him out.
I mean, he took it to this level, and you have to defend yourself, and you have to go for BitChute and rumble on violation of their own rules.
Yes. Russ, your further thoughts?
Well, yeah, I just observed the guy he's actually gone from 14-year-old level down to 12. He has done a pretty good job of maintaining his insult skills. In fact, he seems like he's even honed them up a little bit, so he can just, like a snake, like a cobra, just over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I've never seen anything like this in my whole life. I'm not a young guy anymore. I've never seen anybody perform this way. And not just this video. This is a classic video of him performing, or anything else. And I'm just at a loss of why anybody would want to watch him unless they just enjoy train wrecks and they're just sort of psychopathic themselves. I mean, you have to get some kind of joy out of watching a guy like this perform. And
that's the audience that he attracts.
What's with the moderator, Griffin? What are you thinking? Tell me what you're thinking, Griffin. What's the reason that you're such a big defender of Victor Hugo? That's what I'm really curious about. I mean, Charlie Carter has had a big change of heart.
Right. He's disavowed him, and for good reason. He said it's
his followers. His followers are kind of what actually fascinates me even more. What do you think of what's going on with them, Joaquin?
Well, like I say, I think like attracts like, and I think his followers love conflict. They love the dishing out of insults. They don't care whether things are true or false. They just love the conflict. It's like a soap opera drama for them. you know.
So
And
it's the product of social media and the internet. That's what kind of what it is.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with that. Yeah, and he goes for the sycophants that pat his ego, you know, and that's the kind of audience that he likes to have. And then he X's out anybody that's contrary to what he's about, you know. You know, you've gone in and you've seen all the complaints and all the criticism. He just wipes them off the screen, so they have no voice, you know.
Well, if you turn on him like Charlie is, he'll go after you, and I'm seeing signs of that. So his avatar, his fake sock puppet, Jane Tracy, shows up and asks Charlie, "What's this Popeye? What's the Popeye uniform you're wearing?" I don't believe that you've been in any kind of military service, and clearly Charlie has. You know, clearly Charlie has been in the Navy. He's a naval veteran, so he'll even reverse that on Charlie. Says, "What's with the Popeye uniform?"
Very good. Well, I think we may have done our duty here vis-a-vis Victor Hugo. And Russ, I'd be pleased to go to your website to check out your latest. Let me see how I can get you to it. I'm going to make you host. And we'd be glad to see what you got for your latest, my friend. I've done it. Go ahead, take control.
Okay, let's see. Where are we?
And gentlemen, I thank you both for your contributions here, which have been invaluable.
Just a little bit. I can't get this on the screen. Let me get. Oh, there we go. All right. All right. So let's close some of this stuff down. And okay.
Go ahead, screen share.
We're seeing more and more of this insider trading pump and dump activity. And the Spencer Hackerman on X follows it pretty well. He says, "How you realize how absolutely fucking disgusting this is? The Treasury Secretary tells a closed door meeting of hedge funds, pensions, and endowments that the tariffs are going to be massively scaled back. Financial media reports on it after hours."
In hours after fact.
Yeah, after hours. Well, yeah, they basically front row to give them insider information in a meeting. You know, that's just not good. You don't operate that way. So the first words comes to these hedge funds guys. They're sitting there in a meeting. He says, "Oh, they're going to scale back," and then moments, hours later, Trump starts pedaling back on his China tariffs, and they're just going back and forth, swinging the markets back and forth, trapping people into rallies, pulling the plug on them, creating enormous volatility in the markets. It's criminals. This is talk about criminal acts. Okay,
I think Trump has been installed to bring America down. I really do believe this.
Do you think?
Okay, here's analysis. The IDF is getting back into battle again.
Yeah.
Starting to engage Hamas. So this is sort of an evaluation of this.
Go ahead.
So direct close quarters urban engagements have begun again in the Gaza Strip between the IDF and resistance forces. And out of everything that I would publish on Telegram from my GoPro, it would not be this video. I really know that you guys want to prove that you're hard and to get laid, but this ain't it. Look, if you take contact on the assault and you're already committed, the number one man might get hit, but you also have plate carriers, and then the two man can shoot the guy. Or if it's a barricaded shooter, just lock down the enemy and just toss grenades into the room or into the hallway until he's dead. I don't know what this Oompa Loompa shit is that they're doing. This is literally going back and forth. This is how you shoot your buddy in the ass. And also they have the option of completely breaking contact pulling away 300 meters, then dropping a massive bomb on the compound. And that would have been less embarrassing than whatever this is. Also, these are not correct firing positions, not utilizing cover. No one's in charge. No one's giving commands. Shooting at their own dudes who are in retreat. Again, whatever the fuck this is. I'm just going to watch it one more time. There's just too much to talk about. All right, but.
So yeah, just complete IDF incompetence. They don't really know what they're doing. They never really have, and they just use up a lot of ammo.
And they love shooting kids.
Right, that's what it's all about. Mike Waltz appoints former Israeli Ministry of Defense employee Merav Sharon as a member of the United States National Security.
Go into that. That's important.
Yeah, pretty simple. The entire U.S. government, along with the non-governmental institutions, are run by Israeli terrorists. Well, pretty simple. You just keep bringing these guys in, either domestic Jews or Israeli Jews. Doesn't seem to be any recognition of that, because you got the dual citizen issue. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Here's the fate awaiting a European tourist to the U.S. So let in millions of illegals. Now the solution is to go full Cheka. This is also what racial equality looks like. Because of anti-discrimination, they have to treat every obviously innocent white girl as if she's a Haitian gang leader or worse. 2 female German tourists, 1819, were detained in Honolulu for the terrible crime of not pre-booking a hotel for their trip. Before deportation, they had to spend the night at a detention center. News like this will certainly do wonders for Hawaiian tourism industry. And the numbers are way down. I'm sure these girls I'm guessing they probably came in earlier in the day and knew that there's lots of hotels available in Honolulu. Probably
the tourism in America has really dropped heavily.
Right.
They're not willing to even come here anymore.
So these girls probably just went down into Honolulu and looked around. They've never been there before, checked out the scene, what looks like a good place for us to stay. Probably we're going to get on their apps, go check into a hotel at 4 or 5 o'clock, whatever. But that's not a big deal, really,
So they were deported?
Yeah, because they didn't put their they didn't put their hotel or wherever they were staying in Honolulu.
Unbelievable.
They were subject to full body scans, strip searches, issued green prison uniforms. They were placed in a holding cell overnight alongside long-term detainees, including individuals accused of serious crimes.
With this kind of publicity, the tourism is going to not be there at all. There won't be any.
I agree.
Yeah, jaw-dropping news analyst from Goldman Sachs reveals that Trump's disastrous policies could cost the United States a staggering $90 billion in lost tourism export expense or revenue.
Well, did you hear the latest? They're basically, Trump is going to impose $1 million to a $3.5 million fee on every Chinese ship at every U.S. port, in addition to all the tariffs. So it's like all these ships from China with cargo on it, they're not going to want to even unload with having to pay that kind of fee. It's going to take them out of business. So they're going to go to Canada or Mexico and unload there for a lot cheaper price, obviously. But yeah, I mean, he set it up. So basically,
that
there's
hurts
going to be
our
empty shelves within the next couple months.
Yeah, not only that, it hurts the ports because they get revenue from these ships coming in, and then there's to circumvent them and go down to Mexico, like you say. So it'll really start hurting them. According to former Assistant Secretary of Defense Freeman, the Trump administration couldn't even explain to a Japanese negotiating team what they were looking for to achieve tariffs. So they came in, the Japanese team, sat down with the Americans and said, well, what do you want? What do you want to negotiate? And the Americans, the Trump tard, said, we don't know.
God,
And they went home.
how irresponsible can you get?
It's almost like it's all being done on purpose. It's a stage play of disaster for America.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think that's inarguable. Yeah, ex-Mossad chief says Netanyahu's government worse than the Ku Klux Klan.
Tell us
Ex-Mossad
about
chief
this.
says the Netanyahu government. Timur Pardu said the Israeli government is in the grip of extremist lunatics and horrible racists who are a lot worse than the U.S. white supremacist group.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
He's probably kind of exaggerating the Ku Klux Klan.
I think you do a great job with your blog, Russ. I really like it.
Well, we got to get her a meme, right? Meme of the day. Meme of the day is Trump supporters after the election ready for Epstein files, deep state arrest, and ending the Federal Reserve. The guy on the left. Can you see the guy on the right?
Yeah, who's that? Now
Trump
realize
supporters now realizing they were played and have to weather 4 more years of war, debt, and surveillance.
bad.
Yeah, where are the arrests? No arrests. You know, Pam Bondi. It's on my desk. Yeah, right.
I got your guys show up. I got your guys show up here on around the web. The ones you guys
Good.
good background. Big brain Trump ready to bring on Weimar economics. Donald Trump is studying whether he's able to fire Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, his top economist said Friday, a day after the president publicly criticized the head of the central bank for not moving fast enough to slash interest rates. The president and his team will continue to study that. Asked by a reporter if removing Powell was an option. Hassett went on to suggest the Fed under Powell, who was appointed by Trump during his first term, had acted politically to benefit Democrats. So that's the excuse to go full Weimar, blame it on politics. Big brain Hexas Defense Department staff comes unraveled.
Yeah, tell us about this one.
Seems to be quite the administrator. Joe Gasper's defense secretary's SS chief of staff will leave his role in the coming days for a new position at the agency, according to a senior administration official, amid a week of turmoil for the Pentagon. Senior advisor Dan Caldwell, Hexas Deputy Chief of Staff Darren Selnick, and Colin Cowell, the Chief of Staff to the Department of Defense Secretary Stephen Feinberg, were placed on leave this week in an ongoing leak probe. All 3 were terminated on Friday, according to 3 people familiar with the matter, who, like others, were granted amnesty to discuss this.
Anonymity, yeah.
Well, I've heard that these guys that have been fired are actually not war hawks, but are trying to slow down the whole position that the administration is going towards war with Iran. And so, yeah, it's very questionable, why these guys really got fired.
Okay, this Craig Fuller, he's a really good guy to follow on freight and trucking and shipping around the country. He's kind of expert on it, so I follow him. Many truckers I've spoken with don't realize how quickly container volumes have collapsed. Starting in May, port freight out of California will be almost eliminated. It's going to be a bloodbath and drag, followed by intermodal, and then a collapse in I-20 and I-40 trucking.
Tell me more exactly. Elaborate on that. Very disturbing. Tell us more.
Well, the goods just aren't there anymore. The United States isn't manufacturing this stuff. We import everything, East and West Coast, not just China, but everywhere. So now the tariffs, even moving down from Canada. So it's just crunching to a halt the movement of goods that are needed in the United States. So the prediction that the shelves will go empty is valid. But then now Trump realizes that, I guess, and he's trying to backtrack, but the backtracking is just very inconsistent, strange messaging being given out. And why would anybody, if you did a feasibility study today, say you want to build $1 billion widget factory in the United States, could you even do a feasibility study on that? What would the inputs be?
Well, first of all, to bring manufacturing to America, it takes at least a year, 2 years, sometimes 3 or 4 years to actually start it up. These companies that he's expecting that are going to come from other foreign countries back to America, it's not going to happen. And in the meantime, everybody's going to move to having imports from China. It's totally a setup for failure for America. There's going to be empty shelves.
You got to do feasibility. You got to do feasibility studies to build plants. It's just necessary, whether it's mines, plants, anything. And then you have to have the right inputs. If you don't know what the inputs are, you can't do it. So I would expect absolutely no manufacturing being built going forward.
And it takes qualified workers to be able to fill those factories that manufacture. And we don't have them. We haven't had manufacturing for over 50 years now in this country.
Yeah.
Well, here's Forbes top.
Let me take your call
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Management would like to take a moment to thank the listeners and hosts for all their support that has made Revolution Radio one of the biggest platforms for free speech in an ever-growing dark world of censorship. Unfortunately, this platform for free speech has never been free. We need the support of the people. It is the people like you, yes, you, that keeps the station in the front lines of the battle against tyranny and oppression. Please help support Revolution Radio so free speech will not be silenced in a world that seems to be going deaf to the real truth. With your support, we will be able to become an even bigger pillar of light in a dark world.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Revolution Radio.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Even the government admits that 9/11 was a conspiracy. But did you know that it was an inside job? That Osama had nothing to do with it? That the Twin Towers were blown apart by a sophisticated arrangement of mini or micro nukes? That Building 7 collapsed 7 hours later because of explosives planted in the building? Barry Jennings was there. He heard them go off and felt himself stepping over dead people. The U.S. Geological Survey conducted studies of dust gathered from 35 locations in Lower Manhattan and found elements that would not have been there had this not been a nuclear event. Ironically, that means the government's own evidence contradicts the government's official position. 9/11 was brought to us compliments of the CIA, the neocons in the Department of Defense, and the Mossad. Don't let yourself be played. Read America Nuked on 9/11. Available at moonrockbooks.com. That's moonrockbooks.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, the lines are open at 608-957-8727, 608-957-8727. Any of the issues we've been addressing here today are free game. Russ, give me further thoughts of yours about this business with Victor Hugo, how it is all played out. If I get it right, he has...
I think we've got to kind of wrap it up and not really... give him any more attention. I've been kind of leading the fight a lot of ways against him, confronting him. But I think we've kind of reached the point where he's totally embarrassed himself. And it's kind of damaging to us because I've been getting some comments on my site that they don't really want to hear this anymore. On people that really like our stuff. So it's hurting us too.
Yeah.
It's taken us away from the news events that we're about,
Yes.
Right.
So I understand why the need to do it, but now let's put it to rest and move forward.
Yes. I will be filing complaints with BitChute and Rumble over this. Hopefully they will at least remove all these absurd attacks on us. And if they leave up Victor's legit videos, such as they may be, that's fine with me. I think we all agree. Tell me, Joaquin, what do you think of the most important current development is Trump, who seems to be reluctant now. He's passed on joining Israel in an attack on Iran. How do you assess the prospect?
Well, obviously, we're very hopeful that Iran will sit down with Oman as the mediator. They trust Oman, and Oman has good relations with both sides. So hopefully we can, have direct talks coming up very soon. But I know that Iran cannot trust, for good reason, America. America, just like Ukraine, just like Israel, they always renege on whatever agreements or treaties, commitments they make. So, and the same applies to the whole Ukraine situation. Russia has those basic things that they have been stating forever, the annexed region, denazify, demilitarize, and no NATO. And that's all they want, They've been saying it forever. And, and now that one's bogging down. I hope that, Trump says, okay, no more support, no more aid, no more money, no more weapons to Ukraine. And then that war is going to be over if that happens. But, this administration, Trump too, is like, he says one thing, does one thing, and then goes back and does something else. It's very confusing. To me, he's in a desperate mode, doesn't even know what the hell is going on. And as far as bringing America down with all the tariff war, it's going to be a real sad situation coming very soon in America. It's disaster. And I hate to say it, but it's all by design. They want to take out America. They want to take down the West. And they're going to install their one world government. That's been their wet dream forever. And under him, he's the reckless battering ram that's going to polarize the world into hating America and hating him, as the Nazi, yeah, it's all set up drama, and I hate the outcome.
Can it happen without Ukraine? Because he's deferring to Russia. It's clear he is acknowledging Russia has prevailed over Ukraine. And yet we've heard from Klaus Schwab and others that the New World Order, the Great Reset, cannot go forward without Ukraine. Well, it's not going to have Ukraine. Isn't that going to put the quietus to the whole project?
Yeah, I mean, like, we're hoping that, obviously there's no chips and no argument that Europe can make. They're weak. They have no weapons. They have no real strong army. They can't go in there with troops in Ukraine. Everybody knows that. They'll be pulverized by Russia immediately. And Russia has said that much. So it's a no-win for the whole Western bloc. There's no win in Ukraine, and there's no win in Israel against Gaza, against Hezbollah. It's doomed to failure. They're gonna, Netanyahu knows he's on his last legs, and his only chance is to incite a larger war with Iran that will drag America in. That's his whole game, because he knows he's going down too. And then the Yemen thing, they're going after, the U.S. is just as guilty now as Israel is with Gaza, killing the Palestinians. They're going after civilian populations in Yemen now.
Yes.
They're eliminating civilians and hitting civilian targets. They hit a port, a civilian port. It's like desperation time. And the resiliency of Yemen is like, they're the best. They're the best. They've been at it for over 10 years with U.S. and Saudi Arabia bombing them. They weathered that, and they're still resilient enough to keep striking. They have missiles going into Eilat, Israel, the port city there. They're not stopping. They still have drones going for the traffic in the Red Sea. Nothing has changed, even though they're bombing them every day, just like Israel's bombing Gaza every day and night. So, it's a no-win situation for the U.S. and the rest of the West, and unfortunately, the outcome is very grave for the entire Western bloc.
Russ, your thoughts?
On Ukraine, or just in general, and whatever?
Both, whatever.
Okay. Bill and I were having an interesting conversation, so I'm going to give Bill partial credit for this theory. And you recall that Trump said there was like 1.7 million people still in Gaza. Well, we started with 2.2 million. And so Bill and I are theorizing, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is that it's kind of a extortion racket where the Israelis are taking people and getting them out for a fee. Taking whole clans and whole families and slipping them out.
The Palestinians, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of accounts for, you probably have 100,000 dead, and then probably have 400,000. That kind of brings it to Trump's number. So we think that they've already reduced the population to 1.7 million through extradition of probably the more wealthy people, because you can loot them more and you get more money from them. Now we're probably at the phase where they're going to have to carry through with Trump's plan, is to provide some kind of a home, some kind of a settlement for the rest that don't have the money that they can extract. Just a thought. It kind of makes some sense.
Well, because it's now, I think, over a month that they haven't even had any kind of humanitarian services, no aid, no reliefs coming in, water. They're without everything. Food.
Well, they have a desalination plant, so they're getting water through that.
I thought the electricity had been cut off.
I think everything's been cut off by Israel.
So they're wanting the Palestinians to starve. Are you thinking that's not the case, Russ?
I'm sure it is.
I think it's a combination of extradition of people that have money, because that's just a classic strategy. The Nazis did that to the Jews. The Jews are kind of inclined to get that kind of revenge on people. So it really feels good to them to take their money and, let them out. Starvation, probably kill some more, just reduce it, start taking people out. I don't think you can kill them all. I think you got to find ways for them to exit and do it kind of secretive, under everybody's nose and not really out in the open. I don't know. Bill and I talked about it. I think it's kind of an elegant theory to explain why the 1.7 million number was used.
Joaquin,
It could be that many people are dead.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I would guess the Palestinian population might have been cut in half. Do you think that's wildly off, Joaquin?
I'm not sure about half, but I think, the 2.3 down to 1.7, that's, pretty large segment. I think they could be dead. I mean, you look at all the photos coming out, and I don't see any buildings up. They're still erected. They're all down. It's all bombed out.
We're talking about 600,000 in case anyone ponders the difference. 600,000 dead Palestinians.
And in the statistical count of deaths, they don't count all those people that are under the rubble. And there has to be a lot of thousands of people under the rubble they haven't gotten to.
Yeah, kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think they're set up to feed 2 million people, so I think it has been reduced by some amount. But it's being kind of hidden. It's a hidden genocide, very hidden at this.
And yet
point.
the whole
Not that hidden with all the videos coming out
right
straight from Gaza for us to see. There's never been a genocide that's been more visible than this one to the rest of the world.
Yes.
And lately it's been a little muted. It's not I don't know. I guess I use X too much, and there's too many of my sources have been taken down or being suppressed.
I think the whole world is basically numb by it and feeling powerless to intervene on the behalf of the Palestinian. There's protests, but there's no change. Everything stays status quo. Even though we know it's genocide, it qualifies by all definitions of this kind of the worst crime you can have, wiping out a whole people. Yet Israel has no consequence,
Yeah, and if the United States had any moral integrity whatsoever, it would be putting an end to it, never allowed it to happen because it's only persevering, continuing because of American funding and American weapons, bombs, planes. It's a disgrace. I think the United States has totally lost its standing among the nations of the world as an honorable state. We aren't, and they know it.
Definitely. I think we're despised increasingly by the actions of Trump and this war and everything. The tariffs, everything is basically alienated in America from the rest of the world. And it's all been done by design.
Yes.
It's horrible.
Yes. Russ, further thoughts?
Oh, I don't know. Where's our call?
Where are we going? Where are we going domestically? Is the economy going to collapse? I think it probably will, and in short order. Your thoughts?
Yeah, they're just constantly doing pump and dumps on the market to kind of get the traders in the know. A major fleecing, because it's insider right now. When you get this kind of volatility in the market, and you get given insider information like this, it just fleeces people. It's like a major fleecing. You don't have any. You've got shipping. The economy's grinding to a halt. And how do you reverse it? You're just going to completely act like, oh well, China, we didn't really mean it. We're just going back to the.
And Joaquin is suggesting Trump's not there actually to stop it, but to promote it, to allow it to happen. Joaquin, is that right?
That's my belief. And another sign of impending doom is the market is going up and down. It just jumped way up again. That kind of
on insider information, on statements that are front run. That's really important to recognize. There's just been a pattern of it over and over and over again.
Well, yeah, when he said, the tariffs are on, the tariffs are off, there's a pause, a lot of people made overnight, and he was bragging with his buddies, his billionaire buddies. Oh, you made billions there, I mean, it's all corrupt.
Yeah, very, very, very corrupt. So that's going on. I'm going to probably write a piece on the economy coming up, kind of piece together some of the elements.
When Trump said, "You're never going to have to vote again," what the hell did he mean by that? Joaquin, your thoughts?
I was just making a comment on that on my news notes for the Friday show I do. Yeah, I think he is probably going to be the last president. He said it in a July speech when he was campaigning last year, that you won't have to vote anymore.
Yeah, but as though that were a good thing. I mean, what the hell does he have in mind? Is he dictator for life? What the hell?
Yeah, what's he going to do?
Well, they're saying he's going to get a third term.
He's going to hang around until he's 92 years old, and really.
You can have a third term without an election? I mean, how the hell is this supposed to happen?
Well, all I know is the Czech has taken over. That's the other big issue.
You think we're going to start having Americans lined up against the wall and shot?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I absolutely believe that.
Wow.
We're taken to prisons,
detention camps, all those FEMA camps.
Deep underground bunkers. There's a lot of, they're called dubs. They're all
wow.
They could take people down there.
Joaquin, do you think that's in the offing?
Yeah, I think they've criminalized dissent. So people that are against Israel are criminals, basically. They're called anti-Semitic, and they've made an anti-Semitism law. It's all being set up, So, yeah, I think that's where they're going to go. They're going to, eliminate a whole bunch of people like us who criticize America for its genocidal policies.
Wow. Well, since I'm here in the U.S. and you guys aren't, I hope you'll keep beating the drums after they haul my ass away. I mean, it's just absurd. The situation of America, I mean, this once great nation.
Well, travel is being interdicted and screwed up. People don't want to come to the United States. I don't know. I used to know people here. They were planning on going to the U.S., asking me where to go. I don't hear that anymore at all. In fact, I hear people saying, "Nah, I was planning on going to the U.S. I'm not going to go."
Yeah,
pariah nation now.
A pariah nation, yes.
There could be a big deluge of cheap goods coming from China arriving in Europe. So Europe could actually end up getting flooded with stuff.
Well, that's what's going to happen. Europe's going to go to China for their products now
instead of America.
China's going to dump their excess on
Europe. Of course.
Oh yeah.
What else would they do? They got it. Europe's the market. They'll go where the market, because of tariffs and all that. There seemed to be a lot of talk about walking back the tariffs. I think it's very embarrassing for Trump, because it sounds like it was a lot of hot air from beginning to end. I mean, he's claiming.
How do you plan for that? If you're going to start up manufacturing in the U.S., how do you even plan for that? A guy that changes his mind every 5 days?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't plan for that.
Yeah. Too much instability. It's a losing recipe.
They planned all these things all at once. They bring Fauci out from hiding, and he comes on and says, "Yeah, prepare for another respiratory virus coming in." I mean, they're planning all the weapons of mass destruction on us at once. There's a house of cards economy that's going to collapse, and probable war. 3 fronts. The big adversaries, China. They can't stand the fact that China has gone from being a slum nation with a lot of poverty back over 50 years ago, and in just this short time, they are the kingpin of the world now. So, it looks real bad. And the City of London money changers are in control of the West. And they're forcing all these suicidal policies to take the West down. They've elevated, since Rockefeller sent Kissinger over to China in the 70s, they've elevated the Eastern powers to become the kingpins. And when they're done with them, they're going to get rid of the East. They want to get rid of humanity. They want AI robotics taking over. They have no need for humans anymore. I think that's where they're going to try to pull off.
It's a recipe for catastrophe, because these AI creatures are going to run out of steam. They're going to fall apart. They don't actually have minds. They're not thinking things. They're kind of special kinds of toys. And I think it's a disaster, because when they run out of gas, electricity, basically, functionality, the mighty who thought they could depend on them are high and dry. I mean, it may take a couple of decades, but I guarantee it's going to happen. Russ.
Well, you could get a population die-off really fast. It'd be very, very easy to trigger that. Starvation.
Yes.
Just,
I think an EMP over the U.S., right? And 70% of the population is gone in 3 months.
Yeah. And I kind of want to do that worldwide. So just like a huge population reduction, getting down to some optimum number in their minds, which is, well, there are other ways of going about. There's other ways of going about that, but they've already done that in the West. The birth rates are real low.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The
well,
demographics has changed. Certain demographics.
Oh yeah, that would be. I think U.S. demographics are permanently changed, and that Trump isn't actually getting very many. I mean, he's cut down the flow in, but he hasn't really made much of a dent in the flow out, as I see it. Russ, would you agree or dis?
Well, they're trying to get people out, but I was reading where one of the problems is they're scaring all the cheap labor. The United States is very dependent on illegals to work for low wages. It's endemic in the whole country. And these people aren't showing up for work because they're afraid of being rounded up. So that's another hit on the economy. It's just.
Well, that's going to hit the food supply because they're very important in produce.
Exactly.
And then if they're injecting all the steer cattle with mRNA, I think we're mucked either way you cut it.
Yeah, you can't replace these people just overnight with a bunch of fentanyl addicted Americans.
Yeah, and Americans aren't even willing to do it. I think they'd rather starve than work out in the field. I mean, it's just amazing, because I think that's maybe what we have in the future, Joaquin.
Well, Mike Adams had a laboratory specimen sent to him by his friend in Florida, and he did the test, and it's high in all the heavy metals, and there's also live, I don't know what it is, growing. They're growing, and they're to become visible. He has a laboratory there, and he has it under the microscope, but he said it's now growing to the point where it's becoming visible without even microscope. And he's asking for some kind of expert to come in and identify what is growing. But they are doing, we've heard about this, toxic fog. High in concentrate.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, this could be the setup for the next bioweapon pandemic.
Well, they may already be spreading whatever they're spreading. Russ, your thoughts?
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one, but I mean, there's probably all kinds of tricks like that up their sleeves.
They're going to do all the WMDs to try and take out as many people as possible.
I think they want to also cut back on people's mobility, their ability to even move around the country. I'm not really hearing too much about armed resistance or rebellion or any kind of civil disorder. I'm not quite clear on what that is. Maybe the summer will bring that out.
Haven't heard about it yet. But yeah, they bring out the real ID, you know, Homeland Security trying to do that. Oh, we got to figure out who the aliens are, you know. And that's another ploy. They're moving in with the digital ID. They're going to require that. You won't be able to fly. You know, it's all the stuff that they tried to do with the overreach of the COVID, but they're coming right back with all of that kind of heavy totalitarian restriction.
Yeah, and the big elephant in the room is a war with Iran or whatever. That'll just change everything. Because then you'll have to have a super security state at that point and really restrict people's travels.
That will be total disaster. You know, the oil, everything is going to be so unaffordable.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's going to grind business, even travel, to a halt right here in the USA.
And and Israel might just go ahead and just start this war. You know, obviously it sounds like there's elements, including Hexus. See, Hexus might be on his way out because he's kind of opposed.
Yes.
He knows the military really isn't ready for
Yes.
it.
Yeah, I think he actually is. He's not one of these neocon that wants the war. I think, and they're taking his people out that are also
and possibly him. There's rumors that he's on the way out.
Yes.
There's rumors that the Secretary of Treasury, Bessett, is on his way out. So there's going to be a bunch more shakeups in Trump's administration. And who's going to want to work for this guy?
Yeah.
Such a loony man.
Gentlemen, you've been wonderful. This fearsome threesome edition of The Raw Deal has been spectacular. Let us put the rest, the ghost of Victor Hugo Baca once and for all. He has exposed himself. Get the message. Meanwhile,